It is April 1st. Happy April Fool's Day. Happy Easter. Happy Passover. Hope everybody is enjoying this wonderful holiday weekend. And if you got some pranks in there, good on you. I am Doc, coming to you with Doc's Racing Digest for this week. And we got a lot of stuff to get into. Obviously, the big stuff happening this weekend, it was over in Dubai, Dubai World Cup. And we're going to focus on 3 races on the Dubai World Cup program here for the Digest. The first is probably one that, well, you didn't really see this ending coming until maybe about the middle of the stretch. So let's go ahead and take a look at the Dubai Golden Shaheen.
We'll probably go forward from stall 1. That's what she did in the UAE Oaks. And a number of horses Kentucky bound after this, of course. Rhea for the Kentucky Oaks. We'll go to Bob Baffert after this. And 3 of Aidan O'Brien's, depending on what happens, could be on course for that. And Gold Town, well, we know that's where he wants to end up. Fascinating renewal of the UAE Derby. Here's Craig Evans.
And just a quick correction there. Actually, it's going to be Mendelssohn showing his stuff in the UAE Derby. Then we're going to focus on the Shaheen. Just a little bit of a technical glitch there, but, you know, that's the way it is in these days.
Almost set to go now for the Derby, race number 4. Gold Town goes forward. Seahenge just to settle. Seahenge still a little bit nervous, and the gates are almost set. Gates are back and they're racing, and Seahenge missed it by 2 lengths. Ruggiero was also slowly out. Mendelssohn flew out of the gates and being ridden up to the lead, and will try and cross Rhea as they come to the winning post, but Rhea holds up. So the filly Rhea is going to go through underneath the Mendelssohn, and Yulong Warrior goes into the speed battle as well. It zooms across. So Mendelssohn did some work, but now crossed Rhea, but Yulong Warrior up on the outside to keep Mendelssohn company. Next of all is Gold Town getting into a great spot. 1 out and 1 back in 4th, ahead of Re-Ride, then 3 and 4 pence. 2 lengths away to Ruggiero. They were followed by Taiki Fervor, and a gap away in the field to Seahenge. 25.09, the lead 400 metres as they go by the 12. And the front runner Mendelssohn, given a breather now by Ryan Moore, shows the way a length on Yulong Warrior. Over on the inside is Rhea, followed by Gold Town, then Re-Ride, 3 and 4 pence. Moving up on the outside, Taiki Fervor goes up 4 wide around the other Japanese runner, Ruggiero. And back at the tail of the field is Seahenge. Off the back they come now in the Derby. They've got 800 metres to go, and Mendelssohn does it well as they turn down the side. Running to second, Gold Town being pushed along. Rhea over on the fence. They were followed next by Yulong Warrior, then Taiki Fervor, Ruggiero, Re-Ride. A gap off in the field to Seahenge and 3 and 4 pence, but Mendelssohn's the one to get. It is jog trotting as they come to the top of the straight. Mendelssohn's out by a half dozen over Rhea. Gold Town flat to the floorboards down the outside, followed by Yulong Warrior, Taiki Fervor, Ruggiero, but it is Mendelssohn well clear inside the final 250. It's going to make a 1-act affair of the UAE Derby. Mendelssohn en route perhaps to the Kentucky Derby is going to absolutely jog up. Mendelssohn's out by 15 on Rhea, battling on Re-Ride, followed by Gold Town, but what a win by Mendelssohn. Mendelssohn by a conservative 17 lengths. Second Rhea, third across the line Re-Ride, followed by Gold Town. Next in was Seahenge, followed by Taiki Fervor.
Now that, my friends, is what you call a wow performance. I don't think anybody saw that coming from Mendelssohn. Obviously, we knew he was a very talented colt. He did win the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf last year at Santa Anita, and of course there was that joke. It is April Fool's Day going around. Jay Privman's account was not necessarily hacked, but a fake one was created, which originally was reporting that he actually now, instead of going to the Derby, was going to go to one of the turf races on the undercard. That obviously is false. A cute little April Fool's Day prank. So he is definitely going to hopefully be going to the Derby off that performance. Now, there are some talk about, well, did he really beat anybody? There was talk of a pronounced speed and rail bias at Dubai on Saturday. So, you know, you have to kind of take all that in. And as we're going to talk a little bit about a little bit later when we talk more about the Derby picture, you know, obviously he flew right to the lead. And there could be a lot of speed horses that want to take that same route in the Derby this year. So it'll be interesting to see. But all in all, probably the most impressive performance that we've seen in the UAE Derby, you know, so far in all of its running. So definitely an exciting horse to watch. It'll be really interesting to see if the Dubai angle finally works to get the Rosa this year. It hasn't worked, and it's actually failed. I don't want to say miserably, but failed pretty close to miserably in the past couple of years. So We are going to take a look finally at the Golden Shaheen in a second, but obviously we're talking about races that are happening overseas this week, and obviously that's going to lead us into this week's trivia question.
All right, time once again for Doc's Racing Trivia, where we find out how much you truly know about the sport of horse racing. This week's question: what are gamblers over in the United Kingdom, Australia, Britain, France, what are they commonly referred to as? Obviously over here in America, we call them handicappers, but there's another term that is used to refer to them overseas. What is it? Think about it, and we'll have the answer a little later in the show.
Alright, so sit there, think about that for a little bit. We'll have the answer a little bit later on in the show. And now we are actually going to focus a little bit on the Golden Shaheen, a race, oops, wrong button there. That's the one I want. A race that featured basically, you know, this is sprinting on the dirt, 6 furlongs or about 6 furlongs. They use meters over there instead of furlongs. This was the U.S.'s bread and butter. So you had the top 3, you had XY Jet, you had Roy H., who won the Breeders' Cup Sprint last year, and you had that a horse. I love these, what we call Silky Sullivan type horses. A horse named Mind Your Biscuits. He won it last year with that famous call, "Here comes Biscuits." And we're just going to take a look at it and see what happens. And I'm telling you, folks, you would not think the result is going to be what it is when you watch the horses when they come to the top of the stretch. So really enjoy this one.
Calling them home will be Craig Evans.
Ronaldo the Wizard goes up, takes up its spot now, and Wild Dude will be the last. So we're almost set. No, one more out the back. There is Jordan Sport. Sporting a new set of silks here tonight. Broke the track record in the Krypton Factor silks here last time. We're almost set. Starter Shane Ryan into position. Get ready. Racing in the Golden Shaheen and Jordan Sport out wide with My Catch. Both began very quickly, and so too XY Jet. Just behind them, Matera Sky, Ronaldo the Wizard. They were followed by Roy H, not quickly out, but cruising up on the outside from Wild Dude. And Mind Your Biscuits went back to the tail. About to come off the back in the Golden Shaheen, and Jordan Sport made light work of the outside draw, went straight to the lead. XY Jet in second, followed by Matera Sky. Roy H around the outside of My Catch, a gap away then to Wild Dude, Ronaldo the Wizard, and Mind Your Biscuits. They went 23.52 for the first 400 metres. 500 metres to go, top of the lane. Moving up on the outside, XY Jet puts the pressure on Jordan Sport. Roy H came to the outside. Matera Sky for Japan is battling on well. A gap off to Mind Your Biscuits inside the final 250. XY Jet is the front runner. Roy H having his work to try and get him down the outside. It's XY Jet in front. Coming at him is Roy H. Mind Your Biscuits begins to fly. XY Jet, Roy H. Mind Your Biscuits down the outside. XY Jet, Mind Your Biscuits, flew, got him. Mind Your Biscuits from last takes out the Golden Shaheen from XY Jet and Roy H, followed by Wild Dude. Next to come across the line is Matera Sky, followed by...
Again, just another wow performance. I'm actually a little underwhelmed by that race call, really. You know, you think they could get into it a little bit more. Just, yeah, he flew from out of nowhere against the speed bias that day. And just, I mean, all credit in the world to Chad Summers for what he's done with being able to do with that horse. And, you know, tough beat for XY Jet there, but, you know, you just, you got to take your hat off to a horse like that. He's just a hard-knocking horse that always comes running. And can't wait to see him back in the States. It'll be interesting to see where he goes next, if he stays more at that sprinting distance, or maybe are they going to try to stretch him out maybe to a mile again or something like that. Met Mile could be a very interesting spot for him, or maybe they are going to try to keep him at the much shorter distances, aim for races maybe like the Forgo in later summer, things like that. So it'll be very interesting to see where he goes. So I do apologize if there was a dual audio there for a second. Again, I'm a veterinarian and a racing fan. I'm not a technical genius. So we had a little bit, I think, of a second segment that was dubbed in there right at the start. But we got all that stuff figured out now. So we are going to move on now to the culminating event of the Dubai World Cup program, and of course that is the Dubai World Cup itself. But before we do, and this kind of ties into it, I'm sure everybody remembers this little incident from last year's Kentucky Derby.
We're all in line, ready for the start. They're off in the Kentucky Derby. It was a great start for Always Dreaming, and something went wrong with Thundersnow right away. Thundersnow is having trouble in the early stages here. Always Dreaming's going out to...
Yeah, so you had the bucking bronco there that was Thunder Snow. Nobody really knows exactly what happened there. Did he not like the mud getting kicked in his face? Was the mud under his feet just a really weird feeling? But the jock did a great job picking him up. If you ever hear Tom Durkin tell the story, it really is amazing, because obviously Always Dreaming went on to win that year. He was a part owner of Always Dreaming, and was in the tunnel when Thunder Snow kind of came bucking past him and stuff like that. And Tom will tell you, he has not necessarily a true, but a slight innate fear of horses, and so that was certainly a very interesting scenario for him to avoid getting kicked by Thunder Snow there. But I showed that because we're going to flash forward now to the Dubai World Cup program yesterday, and a lot of people remember Thunder Snow. He ran very well in the UAE Derby last year. That got him a ticket to Churchill Downs, and so now he is back in the Dubai World Cup, where he was going to be taking on the best in the world, including West Coast, Forever Unbridled. This really was kind of a Ganavera, a couple of other Mutaij. It really was almost like an American contingent over there that everybody thought was really just going to jump in and sweep all the spots and stuff like that. So enjoy the Dubai World Cup, and as everybody knows, there was an odd weather occurrence happening in the deserts over Dubai.
They're all set. Gates are back. They're racing, and North America missed the start. North America missed the start, so that turns the race on its head, and West Coast broke away beautifully with Mubtahij. Thunder Snow is coming across. Furia Cressada, Pavel just off them. Talismanic. They were followed by Ganavera over on the inside of Wadi. Next of all is North America, and back towards the tail is Forever Unbridled along with Ganavera, so they leave the straight, and Thunder Snow is going to come across and take the lead. Sitting second in the breeze is West Coast. Pavel trapped out a shade wide from Mubtahij. Between them is Talismanic. They were followed by Furia Cressada. Then North America, the outside, as they really slow up into the back. Wardy is next of all. Going up on the outside is Forever Unbridled, and 4 lengths away to Ganavera. 25.73, so not quick the first sectional. Down the back they go, and Christoph Simeon dictates the race with Thunder Snow. Up on the outside, West Coast to its bridle. Mubtahij, Pavel going around the outer, followed by Talismanic. Furia Cressada over on the leader's back. North America was next from Forever Unbridled. They're very compact here. Wardy was next of all, and a gap away to Ganavera. Down the side they come in the Dubai World Cup of 2018, and Thunder Snow, the Derby winner from last year, shows the way. Wearing it like a glove is West Coast up on the outside. Pavel being ridden along. Mubtahij has enjoyed a lovely run but comes off the bit. Furia Cressada, Talismanic around the outside. Forever Unbridled begins to run on. A gap to a Wardy. Into the straight they come, and Thunder Snow went for home. Simeon gave it some leather. Inside the final 300, Thunder Snow's out by 3-4 lengths over West Coast. Down the outside, Forever Unbridled, Mubtahij, then Pavelous. Thunder Snow well clear in the Dubai World Cup. Thunder Snow, the Derby winner, is racing away. Trying to get there is West Coast, battling away, but a brilliant performance. Thunder Snow, a massive upset in the Dubai World Cup. Thunder Snow wins it by 5. Second is West Coast. Close up on the inside, Mubtahij, then Pavel and Forever Unbridled. They were followed by next in Awadi. Next in was Furia Cressada. Well back as they've gone across the line was Ganavera pulling up.
So, Thunder Snow in the desert? Well, maybe an odd weather phenomenon that you may never see, but you saw it right there in the Dubai World Cup. So, congratulations to all the connections with Thunder Snow. It was really kind of cool to see a horse that came over here. Obviously, nothing went right for him in the Derby, went back overseas, and has turned into actually a very solid Group 1 horse. I think he was overlooked a lot because of the U.S. contingent coming over. West Coast had every chance. I mean, he was right there up with them, and Thunder Snow just outkicked him. And some may say that it was that inside rail bias, but I don't know if I really buy that so much because, you know, West Coast was right there, and he had every chance to run right with them, and he couldn't accelerate with him. Mutaij, again, always just seems to run his race and well, and maybe jumps up for a win every now and then, but certainly ran hard. Again, hats off to Forever Unbridled, that gutsy old mare, you know, who has now earned a really well-deserved retirement. So it'll be interesting to see her babies and stuff, but really, again, consistent efforts all around. Congratulations to Godolphin, who really did clean up on World Cup card, and just, you know, phenomenal day of racing, and that's what it's all about. And hopefully we'll see a lot of the U.S. horses, and maybe some of the foreign horses too, now come over to the U.S. for our main racing season, and hopefully maybe we'll see some of them in the Breeders' Cup at Churchill in December. So you noticed, you know, one thing in those races, and you know, it's interesting. The camera angles obviously are very odd sometimes, so it can be a little hard to determine exactly where the horses are on the track, and that's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine when you have all these different cuts and camera angles and things like that. But to get those camera angles, you notice there obviously was a truck that was sitting there on the inside of the track getting those great views with one of those gyroscopic cameras, and you know, that's a truck that kind of just follows with the horses. And you know, along those lines of trucks following horses and things like that leads us into Doc's discussion points for Doc's Racing Digest this week. Okay, so I'm going to show you a clip here. One thing that I do, and I'm based in Pennsylvania here, and one thing I try to do every month is get to the Pennsylvania State Racehorse Commission meetings. And I urge all the fans out there, if you can do that, please do. It's a really eye-opening experience in a lot of ways, and it gives you some education as far as exactly what goes on at these meetings, some of the decisions that are made and why they're made. But it also gives you as the fan, and you as a stakeholder in the business, as a fan, as a handicapper, a chance to make comments and state what you want to see. Now, you know, you may not always get the answer you want to hear. I often, very times, don't. But you still can get there and, you know, put pressure on the commissions to do the right things by the horses and by the fans. You have to remember, we as fans, we're often a forgotten entity when it comes to the racing world. You know, because all the other stakeholders, the horsemen, the breeders, the tracks themselves, they all have a much bigger voice for the commission, either by having members from their own stakeholder groups on the commission, or being able to obviously make reports every month and have a lot more close contact with the commission than maybe the fan would. So I do urge everybody to get out there and get to these commission meetings or gaming commission meetings, whatever entity in the state oversees racing in your state. Go. They are public meetings. They have to allow public comment at them. And it is your chance to go out there and really state what you want to help improve the sport. And on those lines, as I kind of remove a couple of things here, hold on one second. Along those lines, what I'm going to show you now is the section of public comment that I made at the most recent meeting. And I had commented and asking for three things, basically. The first was for some out-of-competition numbers to be, out-of-competition testing numbers to be stated. The second was to get a follow-up a little bit about having the commission try to mandate that all of the tracks in PA begin the process and go through the process and eventually get accredited by the NTRA Safety and Integrity Alliance. And those two questions were answered before this clip will start. The third thing I asked for, basically, was something that has really irked me personally, both as a veterinarian and a racing fan, and that is at the tracks in PA, there is no what we call chase vehicle or chase truck. There is no veterinarian in a vehicle that follows the horses as they're racing, and if a horse has a breakdown or is in distress, has an injury, then that vehicle is almost right there so the vet can get out and attend to that horse, you know, within minutes, if not seconds. And anybody who's watched races at the bigger tracks or have gone, you often see this. It's usually like an SUV type vehicle that is following the horses, and it actually is behind the human ambulance. The first thing that follows the horses, obviously, is the human ambulance, and then behind that is usually another vehicle with a veterinarian in it that can follow the horses around, because we care about both the human competitors, the jockeys, and the equine athletes as well, and we want to be able to take care of them as best as possible. So this was, you know, the answer that I got when I requested this, and I'll talk a little bit about my thoughts on it after, and how I plan to hopefully go about, you know, hopefully getting this rule mandated in Pennsylvania, because I really do feel it needs to be a mandated rule or regulation put out by the commission. But in interest of all fairness, and I did not want to misquote anybody in anything they said, I did want to just show this video clip of the response that was given when I did ask for this particular measure to be implemented by the commission.
We have two human ambulances. One is positioned near the paddock, and after they get out, the other one follows the field around. So, that's about where we're at on that.
Eric Johnson, Director of Racing for Penn National Highway Casino and Penn National Racecourse. Like Sam, we also have two ambulances, one located at the three-quarter pole that is staffed during the race, and then you have two human ambulances that are located. One follows the field, regardless of what distance, unless sits by our first day room, which is located next to the paddock, where the doctor has easy access to it should he need to go out on the racetrack to handle something. As far as a chase truck, some horse vehicles, you have a starting gate out there, you have ambulances out there. The more vehicles that you put out there, the more risk that you incur of something happening and something going wrong. Whether it be a vehicle breaks down in the middle of the stretch, or there's just 1,000 things that can go wrong under those conditions. And it just doesn't make sense to create more risk than there already is in the game.
I would, again, just respectfully disagree with those comments. Talking most tracks, they follow far enough behind, and really, it's a matter of doing what's right for the horse. So, thank you. All right, so again, I apologize as that cut in a little bit earlier than, or later than I wanted it to, but you did hear basically the explanations given, and if anybody wants to see the full meeting, you can check it out on my YouTube channel, Brian Langlois. I do live stream all of the Pennsylvania Racing Commission meetings, and also, may cut out pieces to put here and there on my YouTube channel as well, but you certainly can see that dialogue and exchange. And really, I have to do a little bit of research, because I will fully admit if I am wrong on this, but the excuse is kind of given there as far as, a concern about another vehicle on a track, a concern about that vehicle breaking down. Sorry, that just doesn't fly with me. The entire industry exists because of the horse. And we have got to be doing more as an industry to protect the horse. We're making some great strides, and even Pennsylvania has been making some great strides in that since when I first started following things here. But it's still not enough, and to basically throw out the excuse for all intents and purposes that you're concerned about a vehicle breaking down on the track when really it's going to be nowhere near the horses, hopefully, says to me that, that just doesn't happen very often, and you should have a well-maintained vehicle for this purpose with a veterinarian in it. There's no excuse not to have it. I did also reach out to Steve Koch, who is part of the NTRA Safety and Accreditation Committee, and kind of heads a lot of these accreditation processes and things like that. And he did explain things to me in a way that sort of made sense. And he said, there is always that concern with the vehicle, and they can't, commit to making it a mandate for them, saying a vehicle always has to be on the track. There are some good compromises made, such as Keeneland and Turfway, where the vehicle is actually kind of on the inside of the track rail, where it's still following the horses, but it's not on the track itself, so that obviously a vet could get there as quickly as possible. But it comes down to the same thing again and again, which is we have to look out for the health and welfare of the athletes that allow us to enjoy this great sport. And that is the jockeys, absolutely certainly, and the horses. And we are not doing enough, at least in Pennsylvania, to look out for the health and welfare of the horse. I mean, that's just a blanket fact. And to sit there and say that there's a concern with RSI rules, to sit there and say that it's a regulatory nightmare to even try to do this, I just don't buy it. I am well aware of the regulatory process of making regulations in Pennsylvania, and I'm going to look into this. I am going to research the rules very thoroughly. I'm going to look at the RSI rules. I'm going to look at the Racing Act again and see exactly if what they're saying is true. And if they are, I have no problem going out and admitting I was wrong, and it truly can't be done. I honestly don't see how that could be the case. I don't see why you can't make a simple mandate saying that a veterinarian needs to be in a vehicle of some kind following the horses, because you cannot, with the number of veterinarians that are currently employed at the Pennsylvania tracks on race day, on the surface, position them in enough places so that they can respond in the same amount of time that it would take if they were in a vehicle following the horses. It's done at a lot of other tracks. It's done very successfully at a lot of other tracks, and there is absolutely no reason it cannot be done in PA. So that is my discussion point for this week's episode. Let me know what you think, either in the comments section or at shelterdoc38@yahoo.com, shelterdoc38@yahoo.com. And hopefully I will be following this and giving a little bit of a follow-up in the next couple of week shows as to exactly what I find with it, and maybe how we can put some pressure on the commission here to mandate these rules and get the regulation process started to look out for the health and welfare of the horses in PA. So that is all of that stuff going on, and while we're at it here, why don't we take a look at what the trivia answer is for this week?
All right, time to answer Doc's Racing Trivia Question of the Week. Earlier in the show, we did ask you, what is the common name that are given to gamblers over in the UK and Australia? It's a term you hear frequently, but not in the US. Well, if you said punters, you are correct. Punters is the common name given to any kind of gambler overseas in the UK and sometimes in Australia as well. And of course, pictured here is one of the most famous ones of all from Britain, John McCrittrick, otherwise known as the beloved Mutton Chops. So now you know a cool new racing term.
So there you go, you learned a new term, and seriously, I love it when I can get any show out there where I can mention Mutton Chops. I just love that guy, just such an amazing character. And really, you know, just if you follow racing, obviously, over in the UK, you know him. You've seen him over on some of the Breeders' Cup telecasts talking about the European horses. Just a true character, and just one of the great, you know, again, character-type people of the track. And, you know, just the kind of people that you really enjoy being around and listening to the antics and all of that stuff. And it's what makes this sport so great and so much fun. So we were talking a little bit about Derby preparations, but we are first going to look at, actually, a race that happened on the Florida Derby undercard before we look at the Florida Derby itself. It was the Hardacre Mile, and this was actually the return, and the much anticipated return of last year's Kentucky Derby winner, Always Dreaming. And it actually was, in a way, a little bit of an interesting battle of Triple Crown 2017 horses, because you also had Irish Warcry in there as well as a couple of local horses. And the hard-knocking, venerable PA-bred veteran Paige McKinney was in there as well. So it actually was a really contentious stakes race on the undercard here. It was a grade 2. And this was, as I said, Always Dreaming's much anticipated comeback race after being sidelined last year by some pretty severe gastric ulcers. And we might take an episode in the future to talk a little bit about gastric ulcers and how they do affect horses and things like that. So go ahead, enjoy the Hardacre Mile, and let's see if Always Dreaming could keep the dream alive.
They're in the gate. And they're off in the Gulfstream Park Hardacre Mile. It was a good start for Irish Warcry from the center of the racetrack. Mr. Jordan has speed. At the rail, it's the fellow gray Conquest Big E who moves to challenge. And the Kentucky Derby winner, Always Dreaming, is racing between horses. A length and a half better than Tommy Macho. And the early trailer is the stretch running Paige McKinney. They exit the chute with Conquest Big E and Jose Bautista in front by a neck. Always Dreaming in the two-path is second. Mr. Jordan, 3 wide third. Jose Ortiz has Irish Warcry fourth in the center of the race course behind a sharp opening quarter of 23-2. It's a length and a half to Luis Saez aboard Tommy Macho, and the trailer is Paige McKinney. That's the 6 of them. They're in post-position order as they race to the half-mile pole. Conquest, Big E, the local horse, leads the way a length and a half. Always Dreaming is second, a length better than Mr. Jordan third. Irish Warcry now maneuvered to the inside to commence a charge. 2 back to the trailers, Paige McKinney and Tommy Macho with less than 3 furlongs to go. 45-4 for the opening half-mile. Conquest, Big E putting up the numbers and stringing them out a bit now. Conquest, Big E by 3. Always Dreaming set down for the drive, not gaining much ground. From the back, here's the veteran Paige McKinney. Tommy Macho banged around as Mr. Jordan takes up, and they're at the top of the stretch. It's Conquest Big E trying to spring the upset. He has a 4-length lead with 1/8 of a mile left to go. Always Dreaming can't reach him. Tommy Macho on the outside with Paige McKinney. But the upset is on. It's the local horse. It's the Hertack horse. It's Conquest Big E and Jose Bautista. Gate to wire in the Gulfstream Park Mile. Always Dreaming was second. Tommy Macho was third. Then Paige McKinney. Mr. Jordan, and winding up last was Irish Warcry and 135-4. Changes in race number 9.
So you can see, you know, obviously a little bit of an upset there with Conquest Big E, the local horse down in Florida. Always tries hard in all of those races. Always Dreaming, a pretty solid effort for coming back off that long a layoff, and I'm sure he'll be that much tighter for the next race, wherever that may be. Pletcher obviously will take a look at him, see where he stands, and, you know, we'll probably see him maybe up on Kentucky Derby weekend or even up at Belmont. Maybe something like the Westchester, prepping for the Met Mile, perhaps, with him. It'll be interesting to see where he goes. Disappointing effort from Irish Warcry, but I was looking at Twitter, and we did notice from Graham Motion, he tweeted out that the horse suffered from a little bit of a case of the thumps, which is a little bit of an electrolyte imbalance problem. So, you know, that was probably why he didn't run as well as he potentially could have in that race. He'll get a little time off, and, you know, they'll recoup and see where they go. And Paige McKinney, good old PA bred, you know, just hard knocking, did only manage 4th, but still, hey, look, he tried his heart out, and can't wait to see him back up here in the Mid-Atlantic states. I'm sure you'll probably see him showing up in some of those match series races that will be starting off in May. So, really excited to potentially potentially see him going on. But so that was some of the horses from last year's Triple Crown. We are obviously, of course, always interested as well in the horses from this year's Triple Crown chase. And the big event, obviously, on Gulfstream Park was the Florida Derby that was happening yesterday afternoon or evening, because Gulfstream would run at midnight if they could drag the post times out that far. But this was kind of a chance to see if Audible was potentially for real. Catholic Boy was in this. You know, could he show that his Remsen Stake win was real, or is he going to be more, again, of a grass horse? A couple of other strong ones in there. Promises fulfilled. Would he fulfill the promise of moving on to the Derby? Strike Power, who was another very impressive-looking horse. A maiden winner from the Mott Barn. All of them were kind of in here, all shooting for those, you know, really crucial 100 points, 50-point spots for the placing. So let's take a look at what happened in the Express Bet Florida Derby.
They're in the gate. And they're off in the Florida Derby. From the rail, Strike Power is sent hard to try to get the early lead, but Robbie Alvarado has the same idea with Promises Fulfilled, and these two flat fly around the first turn. They've opened 5 on Audible, and Mississippi 3 wide. Stormrunner is at the rail. Then back to Catholic Boy. He's getting a good trip behind a very fast early pace. Tip Sheet is third last. Hofberg is second last, and Longshot Millionaire Runner is last of all as they went hot and heavy through the opening quarter. Promises Fulfilled now has the lead by a length. Strike Power is second. He looks to angle to the outside. 5 clear of Mississippi, who races in third. Stormrunner is on hold while fourth. Then back to Catholic Boy in fifth. He got past Audible. Audible's out in the center of the course. Tip Sheet to his inside. Then comes Hofberg, and Millionaire Runner is last. The opening quarter mile, a quick and contested 21-4. They're flying up front, and the Fountain of Youth winner, Promises Fulfilled, has the lead, but he was used hard to get there. Strike Power is second, Mississippi on the outside third. Stormrunner at the inside is now fourth. Here's Audible. Audible moving up on the outside. He just took over fifth, and he's about 4 lengths off the lead. Tip Sheet is at the rail, and Catholic Boy is between horses. Hofberg is still second last for Jose Ortiz, and 4 to the trailer, Millionaire Runner, as they round the far turn. 46-1 for the opening half mile. Leperoux lets out a notch 3 wide on Mississippi to challenge for the top. Promises Fulfilled is all in. Here's Audible looming up on the outside, and Catholic Boy tries to rally. Hofberg in the center of the course has good-looking momentum for Jose Ortiz. With less than a quarter of a mile to go, they're at the top of the stretch. Audible let loose on the outside to take the lead from Mississippi, who's back to second. Hofberg straightens up and tries to finish up with less than an eighth of a mile to go. It's the Holy Bull winner, Audible, who's clear. Audible by 3. Hofberg can't get him. Mississippi is third. 5 Florida Derbies for Todd Pletcher. Audible, no doubt about it. He won it by 2.5. Second was Hofberg. Third was Mississippi. Then Catholic Boy and Millionaire Runner in 149-2. The winning exacta 8 and 7's good for $50.80.
So, a lot of stuff to talk about from that race. Hofberg, obviously, the maiden made a huge jump, so Mott looks like he's going to send him potentially to the Derby. He could be definitely coming into his own. Audible, another very professional performance, really, from the Pletcher barn. He made a nice, steady move. Now, how much pace played a factor in all of this is hard to say. Promises Fulfilled, obviously the only promise he fulfilled in this race was the assurity that he was going to plummet to last after setting those insane fractions with Strike Power. I don't know what the two jockeys were thinking there, going out like gangbusters like that. I don't know if the instructions were for Promises Fulfilled to try to get the lead at all costs and just coast on the lead. But very kind of questionable performance there. So now you wonder, is he really going to be able to make the Derby? Is Roman's going to try to put him somewhere else, maybe the Bluegrass, maybe coming up for the, well, actually, I take that back. No, I mean, this is really, the Lexington would probably be the only race where he could go, unless he wheels him back in a week. Maybe the Arkansas Derby, if you're talking 2 weeks. But this was his really, I think, one big shot, and I just don't think you're going to see Promises Fulfilled in the Derby. Maybe they'll shorten him up a little bit, aim for the Preakness, aim for maybe some understakes cards or something again. Hard to say, but Audible, very, very professional performance again. There are some distance questions with him, and a lot of people pointed out in the gallop out that he seemed to pull up pretty quickly, so can he truly get a 1.25 miles? We really don't know if any of these horses can get a 1.25 miles until the first Saturday in May. But definitely making all the steps the right way. Pletcher does know how to do the Florida Derby to Kentucky Derby double now. He did it last year with Always Dreaming. He certainly could do it again with Audible. You know, Hofberg, kind of an intriguing horse, but I don't know if he's going to end up being everybody's wise guy horse that just kind of picked up a lot of pieces because the pace was so hot up there in front. So a lot to take up from that, a lot to digest from that, and you know, we'll just be moving forward. So let's take a look now at what we've got as far as the current Kentucky Derby standings. And as we look at these, we can see that, Pletcher is certainly in good stock. Audible and Noble Indy, both trained by him, right on top there. Mendelssohn, with his great run in the UAE Derby, picking up 100 points there. Bolt Oro, Enticed, who's probably going to go in the Wood Memorial next week. Bravazzo, who a lot of people in the Lucas camp felt he just got shifted all over the place in his last race, so it'll be interesting to see. I think they're potentially pointing him for the Bluegrass. Again, promises fulfilled. Technically, he's probably got enough points because of his Fountain of Youth score to get into the gate. It'd be very interesting to see if he truly does go on to the Derby or not, though. Magnum Moon, another Pletcher, he's certainly set. Runaway Ghost, Quip. So those are the top 10. You definitely also have Mackenzie in there, but very interesting stuff happening now on the Triple Crown Trail if we've looked at the last couple of days. And let me just pull this down for a second and get back up here. There we go. So a lot of interesting stuff kind of happening in the last 24, 48 hours. Now, Baffert is saying that Mackenzie may have a slight injury and he's just being cautious with him, so he's not going to make the Santa Anita Derby next week. That opens up a whole bunch of different scheduling things for some of his horses and some of the other horses. So now, originally, Mackenzie was supposed to go back against Bolt d'Oro in the Santa Anita Derby, which was a race everybody was drooling over as kind of like a rubber match race here. But now Mackenzie's not going in it. So is Mackenzie going to get better and all of a sudden show up in the Arkansas Derby a week later? And does that open up the door for Justify now, who is the now hype horse off of a very impressive maiden win and an allowance win, you know, going into the Santa Anita Derby, which probably will be a slightly easier spot for him to pick up the much-needed points for him to get into the Derby. Horses like Bolt d'Oro and some of the others, they've already got enough points probably to get into the Derby starting gate. This is really all or nothing for Justify. He's got to show up and finish in the top 2 in the Santa Anita Derby really to get a spot in that starting gate. And there were a lot of people, I think Baffert in some ways included, may still ship him, but wanted to ship him to Oaklawn because he wanted to see how he did with shipping, wanted to see how he did in front of a larger crowd. Sometimes those are not things you want to really test out on Derby Day with your horse. You want to make sure that your horse is going to be able to take the hoopla and all of the craziness that is Kentucky Derby Day. So where does Mike Smith and a couple of these other jockeys go? Javier Castellano was the one normally riding Audible. He was over riding West Coast in Dubai, so Velasquez picked up the mount on Audible. It's going to be very interesting in the jockey ranks. Mike Smith now also rode Mackenzie, but he may gravitate more towards committing to Justify if he feels that Justify is better, and Mackenzie may not make the Derby now. What's going to happen with the Pletcher horses? Obviously, John Velasquez, Javier Castellano, those two shift as 1-2 call people for Pletcher, so they're probably going to have their pick. A lot of people think that Johnny's going to stick with Noble Indy. He might have the better pedigree for 1.25 miles, and Castellano may go back on Audible. So these are all the fun things that you can follow in racing if you really get involved in it, and not just the handicapping aspect. You know, this is no different than a sports, a baseball manager or a football, you know, GM manager shuffling his pieces and players and determining who goes where and who's the best and things like that. So, you know, you got to get into it and follow it this way, and mainstream media has to do it as well. So that's kind of where we sit on the Kentucky Derby picture right now. So we do have one more set of races, really, that are crucial. And let's bring those up now. So coming up next week, we had the Florida Derby that was just run. But the next big 100-point races really are over the next 2 weeks. You've got next week the big 3, the Wood Memorial, the Bluegrass, and the Santa Anita Derby. And then a week after that, the Arkansas Derby. And that's about it. You know, the Lexington, there may be enough, maybe some stragglers in there that might want to try to pick up those points. But then you're trying to do that 2-week turnaround. Or 3-week turnaround to the Kentucky Derby, and a lot of trainers and owners have gone away from that as far as that goes. They like the 4 or 5 week gaps. Whether that works or not is going to be hard to say. But, you know, looking at the Wood Memorial, that looks like to be kind of Entice's race to lose again. Bluegrass will be very interesting because you're going to have horses like Good Magic go in there. You might have Bravazzo go in along with a couple of others. Santa Anita Derby now, you know, instead of Bolt d'Oro against Mackenzie, now maybe we're going to see Bolt d'Oro against Justify, which will be a very, very true test for Justify to see how good he really might be. And then the Arkansas Derby, you've got a couple in there obviously highlighted by Magnum Moon, and you may see Mackenzie go in there if this ailment turns out to not be that serious and just cost him a little bit of training to get up there. And then, of course, you've got the Lexington, and we're really into crunch time now, folks. It's just a little bit more until we get the final field basically set for the Kentucky Derby. And speaking of other fields, we are, of course, always going to bring up what happens every week, the Charity League that's being put on by Brooklyn Backstretch. And this, again, is a wonderful thing that goes out every year. And just to give you a little bit of an update on the standings, looks like it's this nip and tuck battle, folks. I'm still hanging in there. Got headed again as we're approaching probably the head of the stretch. 405 points to 403, but I do have some good horses lined up for next week, so Good Magic and Still Regard. Sporting Chance, we're not sure where he's going to go, but Magnum Moon, obviously. So we got a couple more in there. Justifies on my stable now as 2, so hopefully I can jump back out to the lead as we hit that final quarter-mile stretch, because it is all for charity, and of course, and we're all playing for, or at least I'm playing for, the Pennsylvania Racehorse Rehoming, Rehabilitation, and Rescue facility that is in Harrisburg, PA, and does some amazing work. So that is about going to do it for this week's episode. A little bit of a holiday-shortened episode, but I hope everybody enjoyed it, got a little bit of an update on the races. We're still, again, tinkering with this format, and we're going to try to bring some more educational pieces along as we go, too, and not just kind of cover the races and things like that. Let me know what you think. I'm always open to comments, good, bad, otherwise. If you hate it, let me know. If you love it, let me know. I really just want to make this for the fans and things that the fans can really get out there and enjoy. So I am Doc from the website Thoroughfan as well, and you'll see a little plug for them right at the end here. But I hope that everybody continues to enjoy everything that is going on in racing. Hope everybody had a wonderful holiday weekend. And as always, in the photo finishes of your life, may you always come out on the right side of the head bob. We'll see you next week.
One of the racehorse rescues that is very near and dear to Doc and many people in the Mid-Atlantic region is Pennsylvania Racehorse Rehoming, Rehabilitation, and Rescue. Check out PAR today and see all the amazing things that they have done as they take all these horses from the racetrack to the ribbons and to wonderful second careers. Support PAR today.
This is great for the game.
Is a proud member of the organization Thoroughfan, the only nationally recognized fan organization for thoroughbred racing. Check out thoroughfan.com today and find out all the amazing things there are to learn about this great sport of thoroughbred horse racing, and also how to become a member and add your voice today. Thoroughfan, giving the fans a voice.